Welcome to the talk show, Lighting the Educational Flame, with your host, Mark Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields and academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Our guest today is New York Times best-selling author and president of Cinemoi TV, Daphna Edwards Ziman. Daphna is also the founder of Children Uniting Nations.
Hello and welcome to the talk show, Lighting the Educational Flame, brought to you by Great Success Education. I am your host, Mark Hoberman. Our special guest today is activist, New York Times best-selling author, president of Cinemoi TV, and you have to kiss when you say that, Cinemoi TV, Daphna Edwards Ziman. Daphna, welcome to Lighting the Educational Flame.
It's so wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to our chat.
As am I. I have to say that, we always talk about passion on Lighting the Educational Flame and so many things that you've accomplished. How did you develop your passion and choose your career path?
I think your career path chooses you because you have to sort of go through all the mishaps before you recognize when you start walking with your destiny. And it usually takes you a while because your parents want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever. And so you spend your time in education. And during that time, there's certain things that speak to you. And I remember when I was very little, I started writing poetry. And it spoke to me, but it wasn't something that, my parents or my family really focused on, so I didn't. But later on, I realized that what I wanted to do most was be able to contribute to other people's, feelings and thoughts, and be able to learn from other people and vicariously live through different characters to experience different life experiences.
Excellent. I love the fact that you believe that your passion chooses you. And in my past life, I was an English teacher for over 30 years. So I do want to tap into a little bit of that poetry. How old were you and what kind of poetry were you writing?
I was really, I think my first poem I wrote when I was like 6 years old. And it was because when I was living in Israel, and it fascinated me because the back window of our house was huge. And I always used to look at the way the moon started appearing. And it spoke to me for some reason. So I wrote a poem about the moon because that was my connection to something that I didn't quite know about. And so that from there, poetry actually led me into believing that I had something to say. Also, it led me to utilizing words in a different way because, when you write poetry, you have to fit a thought into words, but also into the visuals that you see inside your head. So it was the first experience that really led me into really experiencing words and the visual essence of them.
Outstanding, because I want to piggyback on what you said about the visual. You talk about the moon, you talk about the visual things, you saw the wall, and poetry is an art form. I've interviewed several musicians and who've written songs and rap artists, and poetry was really the foundation for a lot of what they did. And I know that you've certainly made it your life's mission to support artistic forms and fashion through your company, Cinemoi. So what has that journey been like for you?
Well, that was actually something that was more of a rebellious choice because I was involved with my former husband, Richard Ziman. We built, a public company called Arden Realty. And when we sold the company to General Electric, it was the first time, because when you have a public company, your fiduciary responsibility is to the public, right, to your shareholders. So you really don't have time to watch movies or to watch television. And when we sold the company was the first time that I watched television, and I was horrified because I felt that I always felt that music, art, film, and fashion were the universal language of unity, and it's a global language. And we have to be gatekeepers to the quality and integrity of what we put on those windows. And I felt that the lack of integrity and the lack of responsibility was so enhanced during the period of reality TV, of the beginning of social media, and the abbreviation of almost every feeling and every thought really bothered me. And I think that storytelling and films and books and poetry and art and fashion are storytelling. And to shortchange the ability to tell stories, both in a visual and in a spiritual and aspirational way, was missing entirely. And so I felt that this country, America, has been so good to me. You know, when on my 6th birthday, my grandfather gave me the Statue of Liberty as my birthday present. And he said to me, this statue says, give me your pool and your huddled as long as they believe in freedom. And he told me about freedom of speech, freedom of creation, and how in America, anybody could become president. And so with that thought in mind, I always wanted to watch American television. So I grew up on American television, and it helped me see the world from a very freedom-oriented point of view. And when I came here, that was such a fulfillment of a desire and a dream. So when I saw television, around, 2010 and 2012, I was horrified because I just felt that there was such a lack of consciousness in terms of how millions of people we were being influenced. And also it kind of hit me very hard to see the divisiveness, how one side will play the same tune in such a different way. And the entire intention was to have an impact of manipulation towards a goal of bringing people politically to one side or another, to believe one thing or another. And that sort of went so much against the grain because, I grew up in a country where Israel opened up to the Arab nations, and Israeli Arabs, I have dear friends who were Israeli Arabs. In fact, my very first boyfriend. So it was something that I didn't understand. How could people hate each other because of whatever? And also I felt like there was such a resistance to opening up the door. So that's when I decided that it was really an important obligation for me to launch a television network that was about cultural diversity, that was about storytelling, which was about beauty and vision, which is what high fashion is, that was about selecting films that were not the sensationalized films or the horror movies, but films that actually dealt with issues with a way of really understanding and comprehending where the movie led you, where the story led you. And so it became so important to me that I felt that that was sort of my destiny speaking to me. And when I wrote the book, The Gray Zone, once it went on the New York Times bestsellers list and I won Best New Novelist in the country, I started traveling to do book events. And when I was in France, because I won it in France as well, I saw this channel called Cinemoi. And it was about the filmmakers of the great period of films in Paris, in France, which was the Claude Lelouch, all of that new wave. And I thought to myself, oh my God, there's such respect here, respect for those filmmakers that really knew how to tell stories. And so I wanted to do something. So I tried to find out who owned the channel, and I found out it was a friend of mine. So I said to him, could we join forces and try to launch this concept in English in America, but add these other elements to it so that we could be the only mirror of the universal language, which is art, music, fashion, and film. And he loved the idea. And then a friend of mine was then the CEO of Westwood One, which was the sports TV and radio conglomerate, Rod Sherwood. And he was also one of the founding members of DirecTV. So I called him, and when I told him the concept, he loved it, because he told me that he told the board at DirecTV that what they were forgetting is that they weren't supposed to just mine in the pockets of the viewers, that they were supposed to deliver content. And he was so focused on quality of content that when I gave him the idea, he said, you know, that's the kind of media integrity that I want to be associated with. So he became our first investor and our CEO, and, you know, the rest is history. So that's kind of the journey.
That's a tremendous journey, but so many of the words you've stated resonate with me as an educator. You talk about respect, you talk about integrity, you talk about cultural respect, and all that really comes into something that I know you believe in, which is individuality. And we try to impart this, at least in my career, to so many young people. But why is individuality so important?
Well, the individuality aspect of it was really went way back to my teens, because I started Unicorn Records and SST Records. SST Records was all about punk music. And the reason that I was attracted to it is because it was all about individuality. Because at the time in the music industry, everything was more manufactured music like now. And it was all singles oriented. So I felt a need to be a part of confronting society with the music that really confronted you with its individuality. And so I became a major part of that whole movement. And of course, once we hit success, then the trend was the punk influenced everything, and it created a moment in time where individuality spoke. And I think that was something that created a satisfaction within me. I remember Darby Crash, who was the lead singer of the Germs, going on stage at the Olympic Auditorium, and he wore a swastika, and I was shocked. And he went on stage and he said, this killed millions of people because people started following. We lost at this period of time our individuality. And he took it and stamped on it and said, this is what we must never let happen again. You know, the next performance, there were so many people with swastikas, which we were shocked. So he took a cigarette, and it would, later on, it was called the germ burn. He took a cigarette and he burnt himself on the back of his hand. And he said, if I did that, all of you are gonna do that. And the next performance they did, and it was called the germ burn. Wow. And it frightened me. And I felt that if we can do anything in life, is we must teach our children that their thoughts are individual, and each one of us is given an individual talent that we must follow, because that's what makes the entire fabric of our population and humanity meaningful. That's real evolution. Manufactured evolution and technological evolution is a very small part of the evolution of our humanity.
So true, so true. And you mentioned young people, you mentioned youth. And I have to say that as an educator, I worked for decades with at-risk children. And I read an article that touted you as being an advocate for discarded youth. And I have to tell you, as an educator and a parent, that phrase disturbed me. And it disturbed me because I know it's true. And I've never heard somebody really pinpoint the truth of that in that shocking a way. And I know that you've had incredible work that you've done as the founder of Children Uniting Nations. So what can you tell us about that amazing organization?
Well, that organization would have never come to be without the incredible intensity and focus and commitment of Hillary Clinton. She was a mentor to me. She really taught me the commitment of doing something that doesn't pay off, because she was very focused on disenfranchised children her entire life. And she said, no one's ever going to thank you, because these children, are the kind of children that have no parents that vote, they don't vote themselves, and they don't have any money. So they're doing no favors to politicians, but they're the ones that need us most. And I didn't fully understand it until I decided to make a point, not just to write a check and make donations, but actually go to one of those places that housed 200 at-risk children. And when I got there, I was shocked. It was a homeless mission in the back of the church. And as we went upstairs, and my manager was with me, and I heard her say, "There but for the grace of God, go us." And we walked, and there were cubicles, and each cubicle had 3 cots, and they were covered by sheets. And in each cot, there was a battered woman and children, or children alone that were removed from their home. And there was only one place that they could actually take baths, or it wasn't really a shower, but it had taps. And, and downstairs, there was the kitchen, and the kitchen fed about 10,000 homeless people a day. And it was in the midst of this stench and oil and vapor. At the back of it was the nursery. And on a bench in that kitchen was a little girl, a 5-year-old little girl. And when I passed by, she opened her eyes. I couldn't tell whether she was white or black, because her face was caked and her hair was dreadlocked. And when I passed by, she jumped and grabbed my hand. And I realized that that's the moment. That's the moment where your eyes open and you say, my destiny is right here. And, and she's obviously, I've never left her from that moment on. And now she's becoming an educator, and there's lots of great things. But it teaches you that you don't see the other side of the world. And then as I delved into it and learned about it, I found out that 78.8% of all inmates in penitentiaries come from the child welfare system. And so I realized it doesn't even make economical sense not to take care of these children, because we end up paying a fortune to imprison them, and the crimes that are committed, and the court costs, and all of that stuff. But beyond the cost, what it's really costing us is these children are removed from their home for no fault of their own, because of abuse, neglect, the opioid epidemic, the alcoholism, and they are thrown into places where they are moved from home to home and school to school, and they are never properly educated, and they don't have even one caring adult in their lives. And I want to take this moment to congratulate Congresswoman Karen Bass. For years, she's been working with me to get a legislation together that every foster child must have a mentor who's not paid to be there. And she just succeeded to achieve that legislation, but it's taken umpteen years. So what I'm saying to you is, this is the fabric of our society, that we need to take care of most. Because, you know, who we are today, these kids are a mirror of it. This is who America is. America is the world of the discarded. And we can't allow that, because on the other side of it is America is the land of opportunity. So we must marry the two sides. It's the North and the South Pole.
Well, it's quite a lesson for young people that you just spoke about, because you know, there are probably two sides. There are those who make plans and those who make excuses. And anyone who listens to you know that you make plans, because when we talk about all the things that you did, something that really surprised me was you were the founder of the first punk and new wave label, I think, in the world. And how did you make that happen? That's so different from some of the other things that you do.
Well, you know, my grandfather was involved in music. He was one of the people that helped build the conservatorium in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And he insisted that I start playing the piano when I was little. And I did my first concert as a concert pianist when I was 5 years old. But as I grew up, I hated it because I was forced into it. So what really made me recognize that punk was an important element of our growth as a culture was because we tend to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And by doing that, we'd stop focusing on innovation. And even art needs to evolve through innovation. So there are times that you have to confront and create art that is more confrontational to get everybody to recognize that maybe you don't like that, but it's making you think about other innovation in that art. You know, I mean, I know that artistically, in terms of paintings and culture, there have been so many people that have broken the code and have created art that nowadays we look at in awe. But at the time, it was so confrontational that you were going, oh my God, even graffiti art, you know, has been used by artists in a way to confront the norm, what we call the norm, you know, and it goes into fashion and it goes into everything. There's a consciousness that needs to be a part of every kind of evolution. And the thing is, what you and I are involved in, whether it's education, whether it's, you know, artistic endeavors, you have to think about two things. You have to think about what is it that I'm instilling in somebody else to open up their minds to know that they can innovate. You know, that's really all education is. Instead of the redundant sameness of historically we know this, historically we know this, you know, we have to stop thinking like that and think in terms of how we can inspire the individualistic artistic elements in all of us and the business element, because it's through this that businesses grow too. You know, you can't redundantly copy the same thing over and over again and expect, you know, to be successful ultimately, because redundancy ultimately brings failure. Innovation, by and large, brings success, even though the risks are difficult and you may fail because there's so few people that believe in innovation.
Outstanding. I'd love to have you back on, because that sounds like it's going to be a powerhouse and sounds so interesting. And I love the fact that there's some historical truth, even though it's a fictionalized story. I think that's very powerful. So how can people learn more about you, Daphna, your book, and all the things you're involved in, the children's organization? How can they find out more about you?
Well, Children Uniting Nations, we have a website and people can go on it. They can go on cinemoi.tv and find out all about Cinemoi and about this. I mean, Cinemoi is really a treasure. We have such incredible movies they've never seen, and we don't license anything. So if you're on Netflix, you've seen the same thing over and over again. On Cinemoi, you will not see any of the programs anywhere else.
Oh.
And the programs are amazing. We've won over 75 awards now. And so it's really my way of bringing to the world other people that have created through their art and influence, they've created an ability to open the door to individuality and to great pieces of art and writing and filmmaking and fashion through us. And so to me, what I want to do is we created this as a global network. It was born in France. And so I would like to make it global. I think I would like, and now there are people that are trying to help me, and we're going to open up a digital school because we are launching a digital platform, which is a parallel to our world, but it's virtual, and you won't need glasses because we now have a pattern. We've put cameras in the eyes of the avatar. So everything is 360, and you will be able to go and see movies, Broadway, all the museums from all over the world. You'll be able to go to Spiritual Dome and listen to the Dalai Lama speak every day from different places in the world and other spiritual leaders. But you'll also be able to go and buy fashion and see some of the stores of the major designers on Fifth Avenue and all of that stuff. So to me, that what we've created was basically a world where there's no borders. It doesn't matter who you are, you belong. There's no passports and there's no anything. It's all about you being just an individual and belong. And that's why I want to start a school that's going to be free. And it's a digital school where children from all over the world film with their own cell phone, their own environment, their own home, the food they eat, what they wear, and they share it in the school so other children learn about each other's cultures, because I believe that's the first step towards eliminating the divisiveness and hate. And it's a first step towards peace.
Unbelievable. And I have to tell you that what's so important to us and the Lighting the Educational Flame team is parents and teens seeing the integrity you speak about and the authenticity and your whole philosophy of individuality. It's just magical. And so, to Daphna Edwards, Ziman, thank you so much for joining us today on Lighting the Educational Flame and telling us about your passion, how you help others, your new projects. You really are quite amazing, and appreciate you being here so much. Yeah, my pleasure. And this, to the viewers, this is Mark Hoberman thanking you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame. Daphna, can't thank you enough, really. Great to have you on, and we'll see you soon.
It's an honor.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame. To contact Mark Hoberman, email him at info@gradesuccess.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame.